Nick, what's
What's
your
up, movie?
favorite song by Madonna?
uh, it's well, Mr. Brown would say it would be like a virgin. you go through you go through a whole spiel about that. But hello, everybody. Welcome to Towns of 505. Uh, I don't have a movie intro, so just bear with me on that. But today, me and Ryan from Ryan Cam, we are Ryan Cam 20. We are going through each of the Quentin Tarantino movies. But first, we're going to go through his very first movie that he directed and wrote, and that is Reservoir Dogs. Oh, I got Scott from Sound Lab Studios watching. Hello, how you doing? Good, I presume. This is the first time I've ever done a movie review on my channel, so it's gonna be a first time that I've ever done that. So don't expect it to be polished and perfect like my music reviews. But before we begin, Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. It's great to be here. It's the first time I've watched Reservoir Dogs in a very long time. And I remember watching this a few years ago, and I remember liking it, but I'm glad I rewatched it for this because it gave me I can sometimes pull things from my memory, and then other times I literally have to be like, I know I watched it, but I should I should go back and I should watch it again just to get it fresh in the head. And I'm glad I did because I really enjoyed this movie. And it's funny because people, when it comes to Tarantino, it's like they automatically go to Pulp Fiction, and Pulp Fiction's awesome. But I feel like Reservoir Dogs, I wouldn't say it's better than Pulp Fiction for me personally, but it's certainly very good. It's probably one of the better heist gone wrong movies ever made. People call it a heist movie. I like to call it a heist gone wrong kind of movie.
That's a good way of putting it, actually, because well, one, you don't even see the heist. There's not a single scene in the movie with the heist included. It's just all the aftermath of it. It's the before, like it shows a lot of the before, but it shows a lot of the aftermath of it too.
The closest you end up getting is Harvey Keitel doing the double guns and shooting up the cop car, but literally that's about as close as you can get. Is like starts out with the breakfast meeting with the tipping and that whole thing, and then it smash cuts to the very end and is like, wait, what happened here? And so the heist is never shown.
Yeah, and supposedly Tarantino wanted there to be the heist scene shown, but he didn't have enough money for it. Here's a little tidbit before we start reviewing this. There was actually a movie he wrote called True Romance that came before this, and he didn't have enough money to direct it, but he wrote it. So there's that. So when he went to go direct this movie, he still didn't have all the money he was what he's supposed to have. He had so little money. He had the actors dress in their own suits. Like he didn't have suits for them. And if you look at Steve Buscemi, he doesn't even have dress pants. He's literally wearing black jeans. So it's funny little tidbit on that. This was his first movie he directed, Tarantino. So it's interesting how it went through that. But
Just a
before we
couple just a couple of years before this movie, he was working at a video store in Malibu, California. And so like he went from that to doing short films with his friends and then straight into doing True Romance and then Reservoir Dogs. So like he thought of it and he sought out and he did it. No matter what you think of the guy or his style, I mean, there's very few people who can say, you know what, I want to do that, and they actually go and do it. Too very few that get to the level that Tarantino has gotten to, if we're really thinking about it, because there's so much speculation about what his 10th movie is going to be. It was supposed to be a Star Trek movie, then it's not. It's supposed to be the movie critic, then it's not. It's like it speaks to his reputation where he says this is my last one and everyone's just like what is it and no one knows.
it's funny. Before we start talking anymore, Scott also commented when you guys go to talk about Genesis. I
Soon.
believe yes. It's hopefully this Friday we'll get to it. Not yeah, this Friday we'll hopefully get to that if we're all available. I'm hoping. I don't know. Hopefully we'll get to that. But yeah, so before we talk about the movie itself, we got to talk about the characters. The characters, you know, can't have a movie without the characters. Am I right?
Yep,
so
absolutely.
so the first character that I wanted to discuss, then I want to talk about first Mr. White, Harvey Keitel. What's your thoughts on Mr. White?
I think if we're going to label like a main character, I think he's your. I think the main character is Tim Roth as Mr. Orange, but I think Harvey Keitel is like your sub main if we're going to be doing that. Harvey Keitel is great. He's pretty much great in anything that he is in. I feel like he's one of Tarantino's like go-to guys if you think about it, because he's in this, he's in Pulp Fiction, and I think he's in a couple more. But I think he was just. I think the star of the show is Tim Roth, but in terms of performances, he's like a close second.
Yeah, I really like Mr. White, even though he's labeled as, of course, he is technically a bad guy. He's a robber and all that, but of all the robbers and criminals, he's definitely the most sympathetic. He's the most nicest. He's definitely the one that'll like help you out, like if something happened. Hence, when Mr. Orange gets shot, he like tries to make everything better, tries to ease the tensions, and he always tries to kind of look for the good in everyone, especially well when we talk about the end scene. He sticks up for Mr. Orange, but he's just even though he's technically a criminal, he's like definitely like the good cop, like the good guy of all the criminals for sure.
Of all of these, of all of these bad guys, he is the least bad. If we're going to give distinctions like that,
Yeah, that's a good way to describe me. Like he's bad, but he's not like straight up like messed up.
that's
Speaking
uh,
of,
that's that's for Mr. Pink.
yeah, well, before we talk about
Oh
Mr.
no,
P,
wait, actually, scratch that. That's Mr. Blonde.
yes,
He's the most screwed up of them all.
yeah, let's talk about Mr. Blonde now, played by Michael Madsen. Madsen.
So what's your stance on the whole Vega brothers theory? Because I'm sure you're aware of the theory that like Vic Vega and Vincent Vega, John Travolta, they're brothers across the two movies.
Honestly, that would be cool. That would have been cool if there was like a movie with both of them, but of course we'll never get that. But
Yeah,
I actually think that's a good theory. I don't really see nothing much to like critique about it. I could totally see it being plausible. And yeah, I think I would actually love to see like a crossover movie between the two, like before, like sort of like a prequel movie or whatever.
probably the most famous scene in the movie is the one where he's got the cop tied to the chair and he's like torturing him. All soundtrack to "Stuck in the Middle with You" by Steeler's Wheel, which I'll be the first to admit I did not hear that song in this movie first. It was Malcolm in the Middle that I actually heard the song for the first time.
Oh,
Is It's a long story, but TLDR, Hal in one episode was trying to get into his vinyl collection, and one of his favorite ones was "Stuck in the Middle with You," and it's a whole scene like that. So that's where I heard it from for the first time, and I had no idea it was like so closely tied to this movie until like I saw it for the first time, and then I heard that downbeat. I'm like, oh yeah, that's that one song, and my brain kind of put two and two together from there.
well, yeah, that's definitely an iconic scene that we will be talking about. But I'd say my thoughts on Mr. Blonde, he's so messed up. He's definitely the most mentally ill out of the bunch. There's definitely something wrong with him. Mr. White and him definitely had a clash of personalities because one's like the most sane and then one's like the most insane. It's definitely a crazy mix between the two, I must say. Definitely that one scene with him with the cop is definitely the most memorable scene with him. Uh, that part when he was like You gonna bark all day, or you're gonna bite, doggy, or whatever. And Mr. White was like, "What the hell did you just say?" And he's just like, "I don't care. I'm gonna say it again because that's how crazy I am." You know, you literally saw Mr. Pink and Mr. White almost go into a gun show, and he says that. It's like the guts for to do that is big.
Yeah, and to think that at the time it'd be like, this is going to be the most violent thing Quentin Tarantino's ever going to do on film. Oh no!
Oh no,
Just
no,
the tip of the
indeed.
iceberg.
Okay, now we move to the next. We might as well just cover these two colors at the same time. They don't really do much. Mr. Brown and Mr. Blue, played by Quentin Tarantino and Edward Bunker. Just have any thoughts on those two?
Thing is that I had no knowledge of like Edward Bunker like doing anything like beforehand. I'm looking him up now. He's apparently like he was convicted of some pretty serious crimes, and he was played by John Voight, or well, John Voight's character in Heat was based on him. So you think about it, Tarantino cast an actual criminal in one of his movies. That's insane to think about.
Yeah. What's crazy though is that like what you just said was more interesting than the character he plays. He has like a line or two.
I don't think he's on screen except for the breakfast scene, and then we like never see him again. Like
We
if my
see him in
memory serves.
we see him in the breakfast scene, and we see him in that scene where they talk about who gets what name, and it's just he's so unseen. He's such a unmemorable character. Mr. Brown, same kind of thing goes for him. They're good characters. They fill up good filler. I consider them filler characters. Like they're just there to be there. Like nothing more, nothing less.
I
Now,
feel like Tarantino might have put himself in there as like like when Hitchcock used to put himself in like one frame in all of his movies as like the dude walking across the street or the dude getting onto the bus. But here he actually gives himself a few scenes of dialogue. So I mean, it's his movie, so he could do whatever he wants, but I feel like in the grand scheme it's like a nice Easter egg of like, oh, the director of the movie and an actual criminal. But
yes, the fun facts about the night. I wouldn't say fun facts, but like the actors themselves is more interesting than the characters they play. They're just like one line or two lines, and that's it.
really the most interesting people in the movie are white, orange, blonde, and pink, and then you can pretty much do away with the rest.
Yeah, I would say the more interesting of the two, like filler characters, is obviously Mr. Brown because he goes through all that spiel of like a version by Madonna. That was like his most interesting thing in the entire movie. He just I don't know why of all the characters, I don't know why he was the one. I know he's the director, but it was funny that it was him that did it. But let's just be. Now we get to the next color, which is Mr. Pink, played by the very famous Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of his. He's actually done quite a few things. He's in one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Boardwalk Empire. He plays Nucky Thompson. He's fantastic in that show. Not to mention he's had a very long and lengthy career that's still going. And it's unfortunate, Nick, that when I told you about him, it was like like you were texting me. He is a great actor when he's not in an Adam Sandler movie, and I'm like, just watch Boardwalk Empire. You'll see what acting chops he has.
Exactly. I agree with you, and I don't even haven't even seen it, but I don't know. I feel like Steve Buscemi is such an underutilized actor for the most part. Like he's usually in like mostly comedies, like Big Lebowski, Adam Sandler movies. Like it's fine. I don't mind it. I like the parts that he plays, but for the most part, I feel like he's just sort of there to be the comedic relief, and I think he's more than just comedic relief. Mr. Pink is evidence to me that he's a great actor who deserves a lot more recognition outside of just being the comedic actor that that's in the Adam Sandler movies, especially probably the best scene for me is I'll talk about my favorite scene of him and when we get to there, but just goes to show how great of an actor he is. I've always been a big fan of Mr. Pink. Well, I've saved the most interesting one last, played by Tim Roth, Mr. Orange.
Yeah, I think that this is some of his best work, and he's done some very good. He's been in some very good movies and some very good TV shows, but I feel like this is like this is like him at his best right here, because he is the undercover cop. And they talk about how in several scenes he has to be the Brando of this. He has to be a great actor. And honestly, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and it's kind of underrated when people talk about Reservoir Dogs, is the scene where he is telling the story about how he faced that dog in the bathroom, and like how he's telling it to the cops, and then it cuts to him telling this crime boss about it, and it's just, you see like him building and building and building, so like he's telling him more confidently, and just you see it just over time, just how he starts out versus how it's going. And I don't know, it just, that particular part of it just captivated me.
What gets me with Mr. Orange is for the whole movie you don't know who's the undercover cop. Steve Bush, Mr. Pink's going over, we were set up, and you don't know if they're set up or not. This is like, if you're watching this for the first time, you're like, are they set up? Are they not set up? Who's the rat? You would automatically think that Mr. Orange's not the rat because he got shot. You probably would assume that he got shot by a police officer because, they're showing, all the aftermath of it. So you're probably thinking, oh, it can't be Mr. Orange because, he got shot. And probably what my favorite thing about the character is that after he's a cop and you see people getting killed and all that, you see his look of terror, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm looking at this right now. It just adds a different dimension once you know that he's a cop. Even going back to the beginning of the movie, like when we go to the diner scene when I'm trying to remember the name, Joe, when Joe was like, who didn't put in the tip, and then right away Mr. Orange is like, Mr. Pink didn't, and he was like, why? He doesn't believe in it. Like, he's like sneaking on right away, and that's like
the tell.
Little foreshadowing. Like, that's the cool thing about this movie is that there's little foreshadows, like right away that the snitching in. Just really good. And two more characters I want to talk before we start going over the scenes, because there's a lot of things I want to say about the scenes. But
yeah,
Joe and Nice Guy Eddie.
Yeah, today I learned that Nice Guy Eddie, Chris Penn, is actually related to Sean Penn. I legitimately did not know this until today.
I didn't know that either. Huh. Neat. But what's your thoughts on the characters, though?
I feel like Nice Guy Eddie was pretty good. He's definitely the type, the straw that's stirring the drink. Like, I feel like he is like Mr. Pink is like different, but I feel like he's the disturber, he being Nice Guy Eddie. Like, he's the one that is like often relied upon to be like, yeah, well, what if about this guy? And he's always the one that's questioning the loyalty of everybody else.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. And I'm not, to be honest, Joe's probably my least favorite character in the entire movie. He's just kind of like the boss that just kind of is there. And supposedly I'll tell you what the actor is, Lawrence Tierney. Apparently he would mess up the lines a lot in the movie, which explains why he's isn't in any more Tarantino movies. Like, they would have to like redo scenes a lot. But yeah,
apparently, I just looked this up. Tierney and Tarantino got into an actual fight, and
wow.
And Tarantino said in an interview with, let me pull it up here, with the Guardian that he referred to Tierney as, quote, a complete lunatic who just needed to be sedated. So that'll answer the question as to why Lawrence Tierney never showed up in any other Tarantino movies.
Wow. That's a tidbit for you. Wow. Well, what are scenes in the movie that really stood out to you? Like scenes that like you're like, wow, like this is gonna stay with me forever.
Well, I mean, the breakfast one, that's obvious. We've brought that one up a couple times now. I think the one that I just thought of when we were talking about Tim Roth is the scene. Well, it's the whole build up to like him getting the assignment, him like becoming Mr. Orange, for lack of a better example, better word. Then he starts like in the scene where he looks in the mirror and he says, "You're you're the man, you're the best, you're not going to get shot, you're not going to die." Like he's talking himself up in the mirror. Like there's a part of him that like doesn't want to do this, but he wants to like move up in his career, and so he feels like he sort of has to. And so what ends up happening to him, I saw a review on Letterboxd for this movie that just said Mr. Orange is terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Which, I mean, considering what happens to him, that's pretty much what happens. I mean, spoiler, like Mr. Orange dies at the end. But it just I of all the characters I had sympathy for, other than Mr. White, Mr. Orange was the one that I had the most sympathy for, because breaking it and boiling all down, like he's just a cop trying to do his job, and he's trying to do the balancing act of keeping the Mr. Orange facade up while also trying to stop this heist from happening and like bring them all to justice. And it goes completely south. This whole movie is just, like I said, it's a heist gone wrong movie. It's about everything going south. But I feel like Tim Roth just did a great job and just conveying in that scene of he's bigging himself up, he's talking himself up, because it feels like this assignment wasn't a choice for him. It was just like a here, but he's trying to make the best of it.
That's a really good scene. Probably one of my favorite scenes, of course, is the diner scene where Mr. Brown is going over about how like a virgin is about like how like there's a fuck machine and she gets fucked so much times, but then like like this one guy fucks her and it's like pain, and it's like calls back, when she was like a virgin, hence like a virgin. And then with the part where they're about to tip, and then Mr. Pink goes through all this spiel about how he hates tipping and how he doesn't believe in it. And then what's great about that scene, it goes through how each character is. So Mr. Pink is the stubborn one, hence no tipping. Mr. White is the nice one, hence why he's really defensive over the tipping. Mr. Orange snitches on Mr. Pink right away, like I said before, going to the foreshadowing of that. And that scene like shows a clear path as to what the three characters are going to be like. And it's great. And of course, another great scene is definitely the intro where they're all walking down, Little Green Bag is playing, which, fun fact, it was going to be Money by Pink Floyd.
Honestly, like I love that song to pieces. I can't wait to be a part of the Pink Floyd series when we get there one day. But I honestly don't think that song would have worked as well, because it's like a slower and more deliberate song than what Little Green Bag was. I feel like the vibes just wouldn't have necessarily matched. Plus, like in a perfect world, I don't imagine Pink Floyd giving away their rights to songs for much. Like I hear they were infamously very protective of the rights to their songs. So it would have been amazing if like Tarantino would have actually pulled that off, but I think Little Green Bag fit the scene more, I guess.
I agree with you. I watched the video of that music of YouTuber Easy Money, and I'm like, to be honest, it's not as effective. It's not effective at all. great song, great Pink Floyd song on a great album, but yeah, I don't really see Money being like the iconic one. Little Greenback works perfectly, and it's like a kind of obscure song.
Yeah, it's Little Green Bag is a very smooth song. You know, it's very smooth as ice. When Money is very much it's very more deliberate. Like it's a song with a point to prove, and Little Green Bag is like a vibe song, for lack of a better example. I'm an amateur music reviewer. Nick is the veteran, so if I screwing up my terminology, I apologize in advance.
I'm not as if you want to if you want a music expert, talk to him. Scott
Oh
is
yeah.
definitely the biggest music expert out of all of us. But yeah, you mentioned it. You said it pretty good. I agree with you. I just you got this nice flow. Looking back on your track on a little greenback, looking at so. Yeah, I forgot the lyrics, but it's just a cool song, and the way it transitions to with Mr. Pink, not Mr. Pink, Mr. Orange being in the back of the car with a bullet in his stomach, just crazy transition. It's like, oh, they're about to do the heist. Are they going to show the heist? And it just shows, bam, heist goes wrong, as you can tell. And that's just
Also,
perfect.
also it was um, it was not this movie. It was Guardians of the Galaxy that I first heard "Hooked on a Feeling" by which like whenever I hear that song, I think of that scene where Star Lord's like, "Give me that music player, that's mine," and then he gets tased and that whole thing. Which I'll never forget the first time that I saw Reservoir Dogs. Like I said, I think it was like 2017 or 18, but I saw it and then I heard the ooga chaka ooga ooga. I'm like, what movie am I watching again? I had no idea that like Tarantino like got there first, I guess.
Yeah, technically he did. Technically he did. But obviously, Guardians of the Galaxy is definitely the more iconic one.
Oh,
But
for sure. But it's funny because it's like I heard a version of Son of a Preacher Man and Sons of Anarchy first, and then I heard it like the actual version in Pulp Fiction, and I'm like, oh wow, like there's a certain type of music that Tarantino's really into.
yeah, it's he definitely likes all sorts of music. There's gonna be a lot of obscure music throughout this series of doing the Tarantino movie. He likes music, and it's very apparent. Fun fact about Mr. Orange, though, Samuel L. Jackson was originally the gonna was thought to be he was gonna like can't speak. He was originally intended to be Mr. Orange.
Interesting. I
I
also
know.
I also heard because it's funny to note that I think Dusk Till Dawn came out in '95 or '6. I'll have to look that up later, but it was in the mid '90s. So it's funny to think that like George Clooney, who I imagine in that era would have still been a part of ER, if my memory serves. Like it would be funny to be like George Clooney, like he would go on to be this like big deal like later on, and then like here he is in this movie that was like a $3 million budget, like this heist gone wrong movie. Like it's crazy to think about.
Yeah, and well, I think Samuel L. Jackson was he was in a different movie, so he wasn't able to be in Reservoir Dogs. So I'll talk about this as well when we get to not Reservoir Dogs. We're already on it, but when we talk about Pulp Fiction, that was the reason why he was Jules to make up for that. He was like, "Well, you weren't able to be Mr. Orange in Reservoir Dogs, so you could be Jules in Pulp Fiction." He was actually.
Definitely, definitely the wiser choice, I would say.
I agree. There's some interesting like actors who actually rejected being in his movies, like Django Unchained was when he was thinking about the slave, he was thinking of Will Smith. He
Yeah,
was
it's funny to think that like several years later, Will Smith would be a slave in a movie called Emancipation, the movie that nobody saw because it was on Apple TV Plus and other real world stuff that I will not reference. But I'm
yeah
sure you all know what I'm talking about.
yeah. Well, it's just interesting. Like he would end up rejecting that. There's a lot of rejections or actors that couldn't make it, but then the second choice ends up being the better choice. Like I don't think I could. I don't think anyone else could top Tim Roth's performance on Mr. Orange. I don't
No,
think so.
I don't know if you brought this up, but John Cryer was even like supposed to be Mr. Pink, and he even got it, but then he backed out at the last minute. And John Cryer would end up being in Two and a Half Men, so like he did very well for himself. But at the same time, it's like, John, way to fumble the bag on that one, buddy.
Well, I better off Steve Buscemi took that part because Steve Buscemi.
Ah, yeah, true.
But I another scene that I really like in the movie was the gun show at the end where Mr. White is pointing the gun at Joe, and then nice guy Eddie pointing at the gun at Mr. White, and Mr. White is like, Mr. Orange isn't the traitor, he's not the rat. Joe's like, he's the rat, I know it. It's instinct. I like it's like, how did you know that? How do you know it's him? How do you know he's the rat? And he's like, don't know proof. You don't need proof when you have instinct. He's like, that's all you got. And they're just like all pointing guns at each other. And Steve Buscemi or Mr. Pink is like, guys, let's be professional about this. I'm just like, it's hilarious how he's still like, we gotta be professional. We gotta be this.
It is very tense though at the end where father and son, Joe and nice guy Eddie, and then you got Mr. White. They've all got their guns, and it's a Mexican standoff, for lack of a better example. And they're like, "Don't you point that gun at me!" And they're like just like circling each other. Mr. Pink is long made off with the diamonds, and it's just like you just look at it and you just go, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" And like the sirens are going. It's like it's a point of critical mass at that scene. It's been the slow build up. It's like a diesel truck. It takes a second to get going, but when it gets going, it really gets going.
Oh yeah. And it's a very short movie. It's like an hour and a half, and so much. It feels like so much is going into this movie in an hour and a half. I know Tarantino wanted there to be a high scene, but to be honest, I don't think the high scene was necessary. I think he got the delivery perfectly with just all the befores and afters.
You don't need to like show it. It just the movie did such a good job of like showing that yes, it did in fact happen. It went horrible, and it's like it's better because we can put it in our head to be like, okay, how bad did it truly go? And like you can just put two and two together from there.
It's like in Pulp Fiction with the Marcellus Wallace's briefcase. It's like, we'll talk about that more, but it's the mystery. I like the mystery where it makes you the viewer think. It doesn't like give you all the answers. It's like, what happened in the heist? Who was in it? How many people were in there? What exactly were they doing when they got in there? Were they screaming like everybody drop down? Were they like put your hands up? Like you have so much questions in your mind, but yet you, the viewer, get to decide what goes on in there. Obviously, we all know Mr. Blanc goes on a shooting rampage. He kills a lot of people, including a very young black girl. And there's just like there's pieces that are filled into you, told by the characters, but there's a lot of stuff left out, which is great about it. It leaves mystery. I love the mystery. It makes you be like, what else happened in there? It's cool. I always found that cool that they didn't show it. I find that to be a positive about it. It's not too, it just makes the movie great, leaves the mystery.
Yeah. One thing that I did appreciate, one thing that I had a thought and it left. One thing that I did appreciate was just how, like I said, like we've been talking about, like there's these little hints of who could the rat be, and we all later find out it is Tim Roth, but there's compelling cases for like maybe Mr. White could be the one. It's never like fully confirmed, and even then, it's just a case of it could be anyone. And so Like he could even be Mr. Pink for all we know. So it's a very compelling mystery, and maybe it wasn't in the budget to have like a heist or something or other, but I like that the closest thing we ended up getting was Harvey Keitel doing the whole thing at the end.
Oh yeah, that was a cool scene where they're both going out. They're in the car with Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown got shot, as you would know. He got shot in the head, somewhere close to his head. His head is it's bleeding, and he's like, "I think I'm going blind." And Mr. Orange, he's like, "You're not blind. You're just bleeding." And then that whole thing with the cops being shot, and then it's crazy. It's like Mr. Orange just gives like his like he's just too shocked to think of anything. He's just like, wow, like for all we know, those could be like close friends of his. Like,
Also, and I actually did find my thought. It came back. I love how this movie doesn't waste time. It doesn't. It's very efficient in that it just shows that it doesn't waste any time. Like there's no character be like, I remember this one heist is like it went pear shaped on me. It doesn't waste any time. The movie does a good job of being efficient in that it shows that these people are professionals. They know what they're doing, and they go into it with a chip on their shoulder, thinking like just another day at the office. And then when everything goes just completely south, they just get rattled, and some of them just straight up don't even know how to deal with it. Like Tim Roth, he's like freaking out. He's like, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Like in the hands of a lesser actor, that would have just been handled poorly. But I thought it was handled so well because not only is there the dichotomy of the before, but there's also the after. The before, they're like, we got this in the bag, boys. This is an easy payday. And then it's like the complete opposite. So it's like the before and the after. It's like the ecstasy and then straight into the agony. The movie does such a good job of being efficient in that regard.
exactly, and that proves to the point why the heist scene wasn't required because we don't need it. We don't have to see what went wrong. We just got to see it went wrong, and it just goes to show how great of a director Tarantino is that he could be able to show none of the real action scenes and make it work. But going back to what I was saying, that scene where Mr. White was shooting the cops, like you could see the terror in Mr. Orange's eyes. Like, it's not, they're not told, we're not told what those cops mean to him, but for all we could care, those could be close friends of his, hypothetically. Like those could be like friends of his that he knew for years, but now they're getting killed right in front of him. Like sometimes I think of that, like, what if they were just friends of his, like they just saw get killed right in front of him, or I know they could just be coworkers, but still, it's just seeing the shock in his face. He's just like oh my gosh, like I do not want to be seeing this right now, but I got to keep the act going. I got to keep it going. And when Mr. Orange got shot, Mr. White takes the blame. He's like, it's my fault. This and that. And Mr. Pink, of course, gets pissed off. He's like, how can you tell him your name? He's like, he's dying in my arms. And he's like, who the fuck are you to, like, he didn't say that, but he's like, who the fuck are you to basically saying, who the fuck are you to tell me what to do? It's like, he's dying. And all you're caring about is professionalism. He's dying right now. I told him his name because, he asked me for it. What am I supposed to say? No, it's not professional.
Not to mention that we actually learn a couple of these guys' names, and I did not remember that part. Like Mr. White's real name is Larry, and Mr. Orange's real name is Freddie, and of course we later learn that it's Vic Vega, so like that's the whole thing. But we don't learn Mr. Pink's name, which is, I don't know if that was a choice by Tarantino or not, but I think it's interesting that we don't learn Mr. Pink's name, but we learn Mr. White's name and Mr. Orange's and Mr. Blonde's names. I think that may have been a choice, but I just thought that was interesting.
Might have been. I always thought it was weird that they never showed a scene of Mr. Pink having an introduction scene, because they have the scene of Mr. White talking to Joe, I have a scene of Mr. Orange, of course, going through the whole like undercover cop thing, and they show Mr. Blonde as well, but they never show Mr. Pink for some reason, which always shocked me. I was always hoping that they had. I always wish they had a scene showing like how Mr. Pink knew him, and if you remember, he tells them that Mr. Pink says that he knew him since he was a kid, so we know they go back. We know that, but besides that, like we don't know how he's introduced into the heist, how he reacted to the heist. It's very interesting. But you have any more thoughts on the movie you want to say?
I think we've covered just about everything. I think I'll just wrap up my portion of it by giving like 1 to 5. I'll give it 4.5. I think that in terms of like the history of like debut films, this is probably one of the best ones because Tarantino would get better, but I feel like this is like a strong base to where there are some people who are like, this is my favorite of Tarantino's, and he's done Pulp Fiction, he's done Django, he's done Inglourious Bastards. So like Tarantino's been a hooper for a while yet, but we all have to start somewhere, and for some, like this is like his best one. So it's not my favorite. I think my favorite would be Pulp Fiction, but I think this is like a close second or third.
Nice. Well, I want to say before I give my rating and all that, I think it's a shame Steve Buscemi never played in any more Tarantino movies. He just had the one important role. Actually, no, I lied. He played the waiter in I forgot the name of the restaurant. Vincent and
Jack Rabbit Slims?
Yeah, he plays Buddy Holly as the waiter.
Oh, but, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, I'll show you a picture of that after our stream ends. But he has this big role. Then he has like the tiniest role in the entire movie, and then that's it. He gets no more roles.
Wow.
It's a shame. I think he's great. He's a great actor, and Tarantino never uses him after this, and it's a shame. It's a real shame. I really like Steve Buscemi. He's a great actor.
It's not for a lack of material. I mean, I can think of a place you could find in something like, say, The Hateful Eight. I think he would have been great in The Hateful Eight.
Exactly. But, you can't always get what you want.
But you find you get what you need.
Yes. My score, I'm a big Tarantino fan. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to give this 5 stars. This is an awesome movie. I have nothing to complain about. Not all of his movies. I'm going to spoil it now. Not all of his movies are going to be 5-star movies, in my opinion. But this is I could definitely see why this is some people's favorite movies from him. It's just you just got everything. And sorry, Scott, after this stream, I'm going on Jacob's stream right after. You could probably join that after party. Me and Jacob were reviewing George Strait after this review, so you can watch that review. I'm hopping right on another video after this video. So
Nick's got to go straight to another review.
There you go.
I'll see myself out.
There you go. But my overall thoughts, this is one of my favorites it's hard to describe if this is like in the top 5 or I don't know where this ranks in my tier, because at the end of the series I want us to rank all of his movies, because I'm kind of curious as to how you would rank these movies at the end, but definitely want to do an individual video ranking all the movies. But this, I don't know where this ranks. It's either in the middle or very high. With movies like Django, Hateful Eight, Inglourious Bastards, even Jackie Brown. Just so many good movies he made. I don't know. It's going to be hard. Very, very hard. But my last thoughts, great director, great writer. Looking forward to our review of Pulp Fiction, which I don't know when, but whenever we could do Pulp Fiction, which that's a great movie. I'm not going to reveal where it ranks, but I'll give you a hint. It ranks pretty high. But thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So long.